Hey, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome back. Great to see everyone. I hope that you can tune in for this really engaging conversation. Before I take any further time, I'm going to dive right into doing the introduction. And remember, you can tune into these shows whenever you want at bizbookpublishinghub.com. New episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. I'm thrilled to introduce one of our Biz Book Publishing Hub's founding partners. Our hub partners are dedicated experts who empower entrepreneurs to use their books as powerful tools for impact and success. Today's guest is a master of niche marketing and a champion for nonfiction authors who want to make a meaningful difference with their work. Known for her intuitive coaching style, she helps authors unlock the true potential of their books by finding the perfect audience and standing out in their fields. As the founder of Aviva Publishing, she's spent over 30 years guiding nonfiction authors towards recognition and profitability. Her company has published more than 500 titles, and she has personally authored 18 books, including her first, which sold over 500,000 copies. Her deep understanding of the book industry allows her to identify untapped opportunities, helping her clients transform from undiscovered writers into recognized experts and authorities. Through her book marketing mentorship, she specializes in turning invisibility into visibility, coaching authors on how to craft compelling messages, connect with ideal readers, and sell books in large quantities to specialized markets. With a career spanning 30 industries and accomplishments such as hosting over 360 episodes of the Book Marketing Mentors podcast, she is a powerhouse in her field. A marketing expert who is on a mission to wipe out sameness and empower authors to shine as category-leading experts. Please join me in welcoming Susan Friedmann. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I need to hire you to do that before every year.
You are impressive. There was a lot of hype there.
I'm like, who's he talking about?
Before we dive in, here is a quick word from our sponsor. All right, Susan, I want to give you a chance to share with us how you came to even be working with authors and providing these kinds of services. What's the backstory to your own passion in publishing and writing?
So I never set out to do this, as I'm sure happens to many people. And my background is actually marketing and PR. And when I was working in the trade show industry, I was told by one of our stalwarts at National Speakers Association that the best way to get seen, heard, being seen as an expert is to write a book. And of course, that was the path that I went on. And I soon discovered that traditional publishers are not interested in books on trade shows. So I thought, well, okay, if they're not going to do it, then I'm going to do it for myself. And that's how really I started Aviva Publishing, was just to publish my own works. However, along the way, I actually did get published several times by some traditional publishers, but that wasn't right at the beginning, which is where Aviva was born. And along the way, a book coach approached me and said, would I publish his book? And I'm like, I don't see why not. And then, of course, he decided that, well, maybe you can publish my clients' books as well. And that's where it really started. And the door opened to a whole new arena working with nonfiction authors. And when I lost passion in the trade show industry, I devoted full time to Aviva Publishing, and then really full time into working with my authors. So
what a journey. What year was that first book?
The first book came out in 90, I'm showing my age here, Robbie. I think it was 91 or 92.
Yeah. And at the time, self-publishing options were not, I mean, it wasn't easy to figure out. No wonder other people were asking you how to help them get it done.
Exactly.
I mean, I just want to pause and like take that in. I mean, in 1991, 1992, there really weren't easy, even, I will say, even my first book is in 2017, and the landscape has changed dramatically in less than 10 years, how to do it. But how did you figure it out when you realized you couldn't go through the traditional, at that time, almost the only option?
I did a lot of asking. I did a lot of reading. And then at the end of the day, it was just do it and learn from my mistakes. I'm very good at learning from my mistakes.
And that first book is about trade shows. And
It
is that
is.
the one that sold so many copies?
Exactly. A very sexy title, Exhibiting at Trade Shows, Tips and Techniques for Success. And it wasn't even a bestseller. It wasn't any of those things because it was targeted, highly targeted for exhibitors at trade shows, teaching them how to do their job more effectively and efficiently.
Amazing. Amazing.
And that, yeah.
And to have that like realization maybe later on that the success was in part due to the fact that it was such a targeted audience. Were
And
you
that's
aware of that at the time? Like, was it hard for you to
no.
think about how to define that?
Not at all. It was really only after many years in the trade show industry that I realized that I could get rich in this niche, which I was actually doing. And that's where one of my best-selling books, Riches and Niches, How to Make It Big in a Small Market, evolved, because I actually sort of took that book and went backwards, re-engineered it for how reimagine what it was like, different strategies that I was doing. And I sort of put it into a plan as like, oh, yes, there are some separate steps that you can take to make this happen. And that's very much what I'm working with authors now, is just looking at how can they take their book and make the most of it.
A lot of authors that I work with, I'm 50% of the time I'm meeting with an author whose book's already been published or is about to be. Like, it's done. There's no changes to be made. And I'll ask them like about their plans for the book, who the book is for. Now, they can tell me about their book for 10 minutes without taking a breath. But when I ask them how does it fit with their business, they and a lot of times their answer to like who would benefit from reading this book, their answers are very generous, like very generalized, very, well, everybody should read this book. And I had that trouble too for my first book. I knew from the beginning I couldn't write a book about networking that was for everyone. And so it was a struggle to figure out like what the hook was. And eventually it was about networking at events and conferences, which is still a lot of people. It's not as specific as people who have trade show booths. I think the fact that you started in such a small, focused group, it actually gave you that realization a lot sooner than most people. I feel like a lot of authors struggle with denying people access to their brilliance. How have you seen it play out when you talk to authors?
Yeah, well, I want to go back to what you were saying, because many times when authors come to me, whether it's to work with me, through publishing and then marketing, or just coming and, marketing, then that the first question I ask is, who is your book for? And the number of times they say it's for everyone. And yes, it could be. However, I wouldn't even dream of trying to market to everyone. I mean, not even the greats of the greats, the Procter and Gambles, the Nikes of this world. They don't think about marketing to everyone. Each product has its niche, or, there's group of people that they're looking to target with this product. So,
Even like leaders is too vague. Entrepreneurs, women.
oh, far too big,
These are
far too big.
people think they're being specific when they do
Women,
this.
women.
50 some odd
I get a
percent of
lot of women, and then women between the ages of 30 and 60. And I'm like, I must say that a woman of 30 has a very different outlook to a woman of 60 and is in a very different place in their life.
right.
So, yes, we really have to narrow and target it down, because that I feel is at the core of everything that they're going to do with their marketing. And now, I mean, you know that now through experience yourself of how you've had to, niche yourself down and being able to get rich in your niche.
Mm-hmm. It is really interesting. I want to hear a little more about how you came to keep writing books, because a lot of people would have felt like, well, I've done a few, 3, proof of concept. I know how to write a book. Now I'm going to help other people write books. But you keep being called to write books, and 18, that's a big number. Um, what is it that makes you realize I have another book? Oh, it's time for another book. Is it like a Stephen King, I write at 9 a.m. every day, or is it you have a topic that just sort of gnaws at you and you're like, all right, fine, we have to write about this? Like, how do you decide when it's time?
So I'm going to let you into a little secret. And that is, I look at how I can cut and dice and slice everything that I do. So I have a book on one topic. Could it be broken up into multiple topics? So that's a lot of what I've done. I don't reinvent the wheel every single time. I have on occasions, but for the most part, they are taking material that I already have and packaging it differently.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I like to do it, because your book, you've got 3 books, Robbie.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of those books has multiple products within the book.
Mm-hmm.
You could divide it up into separate books. You could
Now, this is
divide it
really
up into
interesting.
other products. Yes, sorry.
I think this is really interesting because I have witnessed friends of mine, also NSA, National Speakers Association members, professional speakers, who have these books that are larger than a 6x9, that are over 300 pages. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is 3 books. Like, take a breath, like, but I also feel like the market's changed. I'd like to hear your feedback about this, because my first 2 books were easy to consume in one plane ride. My third book's more of a reference book, so it is more dense. A lot is like 100 images, 64,000 words. So it's a lot more, but it's very step by step. It's more of a reference. But initially, I was like, I don't want to write more than 35,000 words, because who wants to sit through this? And I still hear some people saying like, oh, 60,000. And I'm like, what, are you writing a novel? No, we're writing a book for business. How has that shifted over the years for you, and like both what you do and what you are telling your authors to do?
So in a nutshell, less is more.
Mm.
People are getting lazier and lazier about reading. Audiobooks are all the rage, as we know, and it's going to get even more so as we go along, because people don't, for the most part, don't necessarily have time to read. You can listen to a book while you're traveling. You can listen to a book while you're making a meal, mowing the lawn, exercising at the gym. You can do different things when you listen to the book. And that's actually how I consume most of the books that I read, so to speak. I encourage people to have a shorter book. If somebody comes to me with a book that's 300 pages or more, could you divide it up? Could you make it a trilogy? That then you can multiply what you're charging for it. So let's say you're charging $19.99. If it's a softbound book, $19.99, and you've got 3 books, you can package them together, and you're already selling the book for $60, just under $60.
And more people are more likely to read the books if they're coming at that pace. And the advice I kept getting after writing book 1 was the way to sell book 1 was to write books 2 and 3.
Yes.
And then it'll lead to more books if you already have that in the plan. Yeah, I feel like the market keeps changing. Like you said, the
Oh, yeah.
audiobook piece of it. Also, obviously, we have to touch on the fact that AI is out there, and yet quality books from experts is still the name of the game, and that's not something we can rush. I'd love to hear more about the specific problems you're solving for the clients you work with. You said there's sort of two tracks. There are the people who come to you with an idea for a book. Have they written it yet? Or, are you doing the publishing? Are you helping with the writing? And then there's also, it sounds like, a lot of marketing, which makes you unique. I want to just say that out loud, because a lot of times I have to remind people that the job of a publisher is to publish your book. And if they do anything beyond that, it's awesome, and probably they're going to charge you for it. But to recognize that you have a marketing expertise and you're a publisher. This is one of the reasons I love having you in the hub, is because you can answer questions that a lot of people can just sort of guess at. But tell me a little bit about these sort of different ideal clients that you might be working with.
So when a client comes to me, they come like they do to you. The book is usually fully written. And so we work with them to publish that book. If they need editing services, if they need, cover design or layout, I've got people who work as subcontractors that I would refer them to do that. And then I want any book that comes out of Aviva Publishing to look on a bookshelf like it could have been published by a traditional publisher. So anytime that they've already come with a cover that their, high school kid drew, I'm like, no, we got to change that. So the publishing part is very minor in terms of the marketing. My passion is in the marketing. Yes, I'm publishing the book is one step. But once you've got the book, what are you going to do with it? And so another question that I always ask people is, what do you want your book to do for you? Mm-hmm. Because often it's like, well, I want to get rich and famous. Okay. That's probably going to be unlikely just from the book. So then we're starting to look at, well, what else can you do with the book? How can it open doors for speaking, for training, for coaching, consulting? Because that's where the money is. And the book is this unique, ultimate business card that says, hey, I'm an expert in this area.
We talk about this a lot in the author panels that we do on this show. And I sort of say that those panels are discussing the ROI of publishing a business book. We're talking about the ups and downs of that journey. And I love when people share what they've done. Like, the book has led to certain opportunities. And often I have other authors on that same call taking notes. So, the calls are very valuable, even to the fellow panelists, to be thinking outside the box, to figure out how to use it as a calling card. There's some really creative things. Publishing alone does none of that. Like, my talk and my new coming soon book is don't just hit publish, launch your book, right? It's not about just doing the one thing. Here's the full title if you want to. I'll run this out. This is new to everyone listening. It's going to come out this year. Don't just hit publish, launch your book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews and Revenue. So you and I are speaking the same language. And I think that for me, I position myself between the publication and the marketing.
Very much.
Marketing and PR is great, but if your book doesn't have reviews and doesn't have sales, then you're basically sending people to a landing page that doesn't convert. So, which is again why I think us being referral partners makes so much sense. I don't want to be in charge of publishing people's books or helping them do ongoing marketing and like those strategies. What are the marketing pieces that you're offering them? And is it more like PR marketing? Is it more social media strategy? Is it getting on stages, or is it a little bit of whatever they need?
It's where their passion lies. I want to know what turns them on with their book. And most often it's that they want to get on stages. They want to be, either keynote speakers. They want to be on summits. They want to, they want their message to get out there into the marketplace. And so, yes, we talk about what the possibilities are, and yes, how they can, where are there opportunities to sell the book in bulk? Because that's what I want them to do. I don't want them to be selling books in onesies and twosies at the back of the room. That's for the birds. I mean, I've done it. It's soul destroying. You bring 40 or 50 books, you schlep them to the venue, and then 2 people buy the book. It's like, no. So how can they pre-sell? Everybody in the audience needs to have a copy of the book beforehand. So it's taking almost as much effort to sell 100 books than it is to sell 1 book
I
or
love that.
5 books. And
Yeah.
that's the mindset that I want my authors to start thinking about, is like, and we really work at where are there opportunities where they can do this? Where is their niche market? Who are the target? What industry are they working in? And the more that they can get into that, the more opportunities that there are. Yes, social media, we know, does it work? It's a crapshoot. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. PR, it's difficult to get an ROI on PR. I know PR people won't say that, but I've been in PR. I know what it takes. And these days, you don't have the publications. I was in every single publication that was related to the trade show industry. Nowadays, everything's online.
Yeah.
And, we don't have the same media as we had, in the olden days, as my kids would say.
Well, even TV. I have 2 friends that have managed to get on the Today Show, and both have shared that it didn't lead to book sales. It increased their credibility. It's a feather in their cap, and they absolutely will front and center it on their websites, and it'll
Yeah.
help for future sales of books and speaking and coaching and whatever else they do. But it doesn't translate one to one. Like, you don't say like, "Oh, I'm going to be on the Today Show for 15 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever they give you, and I'm therefore going to sell this many books." So it's interesting. You have to really understand, like, what is your goal in pursuing any kind of marketing PR. And if revenue is the goal, which it sounds like you're really helping them focus on the revenue side of this, well, then how do we do things that will lead to more dollars and cents in your bank account? That's the one I always say, like, that's the success that counts. Like, does your bank account balance change in the positive? Then you're doing things that are helping get the book out into the world, but also attracting the right people to you. I'd love to hear a client success story, someone who maybe didn't have this mindset and then sort of follow your process and realize the doors that were opening up for them.
So that's interesting, because many, if not most of my, clients start off with not having the mindset.
Mhm.
And so it really is changing the look and feel of everything that they think about doing. Because, they say to me, "Oh, well, how do I get into bookstores? What about Amazon?" And I'm like, yes, that's great. I think you should be on Amazon. I think everybody should be on Amazon, but don't rely on Amazon. Amazon's a shop window. It's just like a bookstore. You're putting your book into a shop window. However, and you have to bring your people there to the shop window. Don't rely on Amazon. People think that Amazon's going to do it for you. So my clients have to have this change of mindset. So we start thinking about the different industries. And I've got several authors who now are at the stage where they are on stages and they're pre-selling the book. 100, 200, 300, so that everybody in the audience has it. How does that happen? It could be part of the meeting planner. You put it in your contract. It could be that you find a sponsor for the book. Somebody who's got the same target audience as you and are interested in what you have to offer. And then when we start looking at that approach, you're thinking a whole lot differently. And this is the mindset that, my clients work with, so that I want them to sell in bulk. I'm so excited if they sell, 50, even if they sell 10, it's just something more than just selling one book on Amazon.
Yeah, I only focus on individual sales during the sort of pre-launch between publication and the launch day, which is about, in my process, 2.5, 3 weeks, which is the launch team buying the discounted Kindle, putting their review on Amazon, and the single sales are really just to get the reviews to be verified. It helps move the sales ranking up, so they still hopefully can stay there for a little longer. But after that, when we're talking about the sort of public part of all of this, I love the idea of focusing on the bulk sales. My first book was a great fit for this. It was about networking at conferences, and I was going to a conference to speak about it. And so I did it by offering somewhere between 20 and 50 copies as included in my price, depending on sort of what price they gave.
Perfect.
And
Yes.
then I said, oh, and there's a 20% discount if you buy 50 or more. So
Yeah.
if there was 150 or 200 people in the room, well, the thing about 50 books is if I offered them 3, they would have just given them out to people who ask questions. But because I offer them 50, well, now they have to figure out what to do with 50.
Exactly.
And then they go, well, I guess everybody should get one. So that's how I kind of went about that. I also did a couple options, co-branded the bookmark. So sometimes I co-branded it to be, I gave them design and then they printed everything, which means it was no additional cost to me. If you have a sponsor, that's another way of doing that. If they weren't interested in doing that, I often brought my own that would have my signature, my little, my saying, be the croissant. And on the back, it also had how to find the tips. So basically, how do you get my opt-in? And that way, I didn't have to sit there signing every book. I would walk around with a Sharpie in my pocket after the event and we'd mingle, networking. And I would, as I was chatting with them, take their book out of their hands and sign it to them. But
Yeah.
I never wanted to sit
Perfect.
there pre-writing them the night before or sit behind a table just murmuring at people for 30 seconds apiece. Because that's also preventing them from networking. Like they're all just standing in line. So for me, I think there's a lot of branding opportunities, and I've even seen some folks redo their books with special forwards, because like they'll have a company leader write a forward or an industry leader write a forward, and then they'll publish a version of that book to sell to that
Absolutely.
industry. I mean, there's a lot of,
That's
if you're in charge of your own destiny, then there's a lot you can do.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened with my exhibiting at trade shows,
Mm,
because I started off by selling 2,000 copies, and we customized the cover. And for the company, there was a letter from the chairman on the inside, and then the rest of the book was exactly the same. Or, like you said, making a bookmark. I mean,
mhm.
all of these things are ideas that often people aren't thinking about. And then, being in the trade show industry, I thought about, how can you use the book at a trade show? Could a company be giving that book away? I mean, then you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of copies. Could you be at the booth signing copies? You're speaking at the event, and you can encourage people to come to booth 123, where the XYZ company is giving away a copy of my book, and I'll be more than happy to sign it for you.
Which makes
So
the
it's that.
exhibitor happy because you're driving foot traffic
Exactly,
to their
exactly.
booth. That's
Yes.
amazing. Yes.
Yes. So just that idea alone, if your listeners, your viewers now take that idea, I mean, that could make them a lot of money.
It could. Before this, my best tip for exhibitor booths, I saw this once. The front of the table, they had Hershey Kisses, very easy reach right on the edge of the table. Behind the back of the table, up high on something in a bowl, full size candy bars, all kinds. And in the front, it said free. In the back, it said ask a question. And so if you stood there long enough to ask a question, you got a full size bar of candy. And I just thought that is so clever because we all just walk around swiping, the stuff into a bag. Never, it wouldn't even stop to look who gave us the fidget spinner anyway. So we get back to anyway. I thought, you got to draw people in, and having an author there and having them talk about their book, and you're sponsoring that experience. brings people to the table, and they're going to stand there while you're signing the book. They could also be hearing about that exhibitors wares,
Exactly.
services.
It's a great crowd drawer, as soon as,
Yeah.
and you've been to shows and you see people lining up, and then next thing is, oh, what are they lining up for? Curiosity steps in, and you're like, oh, maybe I'll join the queue.
It's true. Often it's those spinning things where they're giving out a prize that
Yes.
everyone queues up for, and the booths near them are like, we're here too.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly,
you got to
exactly,
draw
and they
some
don't
in.
like it. They don't like it. But
So
that takes forethought. This isn't
yes.
something that on the spur of the moment. This takes planning, and marketing your book properly takes planning. It isn't something that overnight is going to just skyrocket.
Do you work with specific people who send you okay, here's how I'm going to phrase this. I've said to people, if you were hiring professionals as you're working on your book and they don't consistently ask you who this book is for and consistently ask you about your goals and consistently push back on what your assumptions are, then you are hiring the wrong people. Your job, my job, would be easier if the people helping them write the book are always asking those questions, because then they have a book with a clear audience, and you don't end up with people saying, oh, everyone needs this book. So do you attract certain, over these years, like certain authors are coming from certain people who help people write books that are for books who are, around helping them grow their business? Or like, are people just sort of finding you randomly? Like, I'm curious about your referral streams for this and whether they are providing the right kind of support to help you do your best work with these authors.
And I wish I could say that they were. Unfortunately, not necessarily. However, I mean, I get referred by a lot of book coaches who send their people to me. And the people who work best with me are people who are serious and are willing to invest in marketing. Because as you and I know, if you're out there, as a hybrid, or you're doing self-publishing, the fact is that you yourself are investing the money. And, it's not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So they've already invested a whole lot of money into getting that book to market. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, they think they're at the end of the line, rather than thinking that the train continues on its journey. And, in fact, you've got a lot longer journey ahead of you. I had one author ask me once and said, how long do I keep marketing my book? And I'm like, how long do you want to keep selling your book?
Yeah. Yeah. Every day that ends in Y from now until forever.
Yeah. It's like, yes,
Funny.
it's an ongoing process. My Riches and Niches book, I wrote, I don't know, 10 years ago, 10, maybe even 15 years ago. That's still selling. My Meeting and Event Planning for Dummies, 20 plus years ago. In fact, Wiley just came back to me and asked me to just redo the technical side of the book, because that had been outdated, and now they brought it out as business meetings and event planning for dummies. So it's like, the book needs to be evergreen. If there's one piece of advice as you're writing your book, is the more evergreen that you can make your book, that means that it's going to stand the test of time. Then that book has a chance of continuing. If it's very technical and things are changing in that environment, then you're going to have to keep upping and republishing. And yeah, but if they can make it evergreen,
I had
that's
a question about
dynamite.
this when writing my third book, which is about leveraging Zoom to create
Mm-hmm.
transformative experiences. And what I finally realized was the technical steps of where the buttons are on the page on Zoom, that's going to change. It was changing while I was writing the book. But the strategies and techniques around facilitation and design principles were evergreen.
Correct.
And like leaning into that and sort of letting people know you can take these principles and apply it to a Teams meeting and a lot of it to an in-person meeting. It's just understanding what you're trying to get out of this experience of bringing people together, knowing the platform you're using. And then, the widgets will change, the buttons will change. But if you know something is possible, you'll know to look for how to do it in a different context. I had to kind of make peace for that because, any kind of book on technology has changed so quickly. But I love this idea of knowing from the get-go who your audience is, writing an evergreen book. It's one of the things I love about organizing a Kindle cross-promotion event, which this year I'll be offering 3 times. And I have authors like you who have books that are 8-10 years old, but they put them in because the books are still
They
highly
sell.
relevant. And
Yeah.
it actually gets them re-energized about the book, a book they maybe haven't thought of in a while. And suddenly their network is like, what's this book? You got a book? And it's like, well, yeah, I've had a book for 8 years. Like, what, but your network needs to be reminded of that. So I love opportunities to keep finding ways to market.
Absolutely. The more opportunities to keep it fresh.
Yeah. I'd love
I
to
mean,
hear your thoughts about the hub. You are a founding member of the BizBook Publishing Hub. And what that means is I came to you when I had an idea. I'm not even sure at the time you and I first had a conversation that I had anything on paper or on a website or design. I mean, it was just like thinking about this thing. And it grew very quickly. We're actually in the process of sort of writing the ship down to probably about a dozen to 2 dozen referral partners, make it a little less overwhelming. You've decided to continue on with us. What's your experience been? Why do you think it's important to have a referral network like this? Have you been going to our events? Like, I'd love to just, hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, first of all, kudos to you for having the idea. And yeah, I'm a great follower and fan of you and your work. I've interviewed you a few times on my podcast, Book Marketing Mentors. And the value for me is, first and foremost, is the networking with my peers. And, we're working primarily solo. And you want to have contact with other people in the industry. I learned so much. I mean, that's one of the reasons I started Book Marketing Mentors, my podcast, which is now in its 8th year. And I get to meet incredible people. And it's some of the people that I've met through the hub who I've now been interviewing on the podcast. And in turn, they interview me on the podcast. So there becomes that relationship. So it's developing those relationships. And the fact that you've put this incredible group of people together, people who I'm like, how did I not know about you before this? That I would not necessarily have found. And we're all here to support each other. The pie, the story through National Speakers Association is like the pie, you just make the pie bigger. And, you're not going to be selfish and just try and keep this all to yourself. And that's what I love, your generosity in what you're doing with all of this. And yeah, I'm going to support you.
Thank you so much for supporting me. Some of the interesting byproducts of this have been people telling me that they've used this to start to actually narrow down what they offer, because there were parts of their business they felt they had to do. It wasn't the thing they most loved doing, but they felt like someone had to do it. And then they're discovering, oh, there's somebody else that does this really well. And so that's happening. I have someone who has to actually dial back her business because of her health. She's doing sort of an early retirement, modified retirement. And so she never before felt like she had good people to pass her prospects and clients to. And that's been able to happen more seamlessly. So these are things that when I started, I didn't really think about that. I was more thinking about people who were just, doing business and looking for ways to get referrals. But it's the monthly meetings that I think people are getting a chance to connect and outside of those, even get on a Zoom call, do like you said, a podcast interview. A lot of goods come from that. And this podcast, I mean, I had a show for 8.5 years and suddenly was like, oh, I have a lot of content around books and authors. And here we are, twice a week, sharing good content. So,
which is incredible. Is absolutely incredible. I mean, I'm doing mine once a week, and I know what that takes, and that's why I'm always on the lookout for good people. And you've got a lot of good people who are part of the hub.
yeah,
And so, yes, I mean, often during our time online together, I'm, texting somebody and saying, hey, would you like to be on the show? Would you like to be a guest expert? Because I hear them, something that they said. I was like, oh, I think that would make an interesting interview.
that's
So I'm
awesome.
always looking for different angles.
Yep.
And even though I've had people talking about the same thing, same subject matter, they all come to it from a different angle. And that's what I want to tap into. In the same way, I'm sure you've interviewed other publishers, you've interviewed other marketers, but
Right.
we're all coming and adding something different to this. So yes, kudos.
That's one of the things I love most is showing, again, we're not competitors. We're often collaborators who haven't yet collaborated. We come at it, we serve similar audiences sometimes, but from different angles. The work is lighter because we have each other. I've also seen sometimes someone has a dedicated, I don't know, a formatter who does the interior design formatting, and then that person is not available. And they're like, oh wait, rather than scramble and go to like Upwork, they tap into the network, and then Hub says, oh, I have somebody that I work with all the time, here they are. Like that kind of responsiveness, so that we're not alone. I love that you mentioned the idea that, like, we work a lot in isolation. This is making it more of an industry space. In a moment, I'm going to ask you for your advice that you would give to someone who's writing a book to help them grow their business. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Susan, what advice would you give someone? You got a lot of advice. So give us your top few things. They're writing a book specifically to help them grow their business as a speaker, a coach, consultant, thought leader. What do you think they should do?
So first and foremost, answer those two questions. What do you want the book to do for you, and who is your audience, your target audience? If you know that going in, that's really going to help in terms of everything that you do after that. And then look at what else can the book do? How can you cut, slice, and dice the book? How can you make other products out of the book? You've put all this time, energy, and money into one book. Let's make the most of it.
Yeah.
So I want that thinking, if they can get into that mindset, that would be invaluable for every single author out there.
Is it too early to think about marketing the book before the book's been written?
I think you have a good idea of what it is that you want from the book. Once you have the cover designed, you can start marketing the heck out of that book.
So I'll do you one better. I actually end up marketing the book before it's written, because as soon as I'm like right now, I'm just about to start book 4. I just over this break started working on it. And I now have a title that I like. So I'm starting to talk about it. I don't know when I'm going to have a cover. I don't personally start with the visual. Some people do. But I'm going to start building a launch team, because it would be really poor form if my book about launches didn't do well with reviews. And so I need to set up a landing page. And I remember doing this for my last book. The title of the book changed. No one cared. People who joined those first 2-3 months while the book was still being written were my close people. They were like, yep, I want to be kept in the know for when this book is ready. And then the book was suddenly available, and they were in this. They didn't say, but wait, wasn't this book called something else in October? It's January. It's changed. Like, no one cared about that.
Nobody cares. Nobody
So
cares.
every opportunity, to me, I am always telling people to stop writing in secret, because you should just be talking. First of all, I feel like I get a better book by talking to people about what the book's about, and then I get stories, and then I find out whether I'm on the right path, even for what the content is that I'm thinking it needs to be written. But I think people are afraid sometimes to do that. But I think, that I think that piece you said earlier about know what you want this book to do for you and know who it's for. That second one is actually hard for some people. That
Mm-hmm.
idea, like, do you have any exercises for niching? Because I
Oh,
just
yes.
it's so hard I mean, that whole question of who's your ideal client, like, I remember hating that question in the beginning.
Yes, it is I hate it too when somebody says that to me. Or what's your avatar? I was like, okay, yeah. So I go about it very differently. And I would love to offer any of your viewers, listeners, a 20-minute session where we could literally find your niche market. And I have got a pretty good track record that within 20 minutes, I could definitely find one that you could get started with.
That's amazing. It's a super generous offer, which actually brings me to how people can find you and follow your work. What would you like to include in the show notes?
So I think the best way is to go to bookmarketingbrainstorm.com, and then they can sign up for a 20-minute session with me. And we can do a lot of different things on that session, whether it's looking for the right market, whether it's, a name. People often, like you said, are not sure about the title of their book. Let's look at coming up with that. By the way, AI is brilliant at that. ChatGPT. You can get a lot of great ideas. So yes, if they go to bookmarketingbrainstorm.com, then I would be more than happy to do a 20-minute session with them, and we can go from there.
Fantastic. I also in the show notes will have your LinkedIn and your YouTube, avivapubs.com. We'll put a link to your author page on Amazon because you have a lot
Fabulous.
of content there. And of course, your
The
pub,
podcast.
your podcast. Oh my gosh, there's so much here. I'm gonna make a note. We're gonna put the podcast in here.
Book marketing mentors. Yes.
Your Biz Book Publishing Hub founding hub partner profile page. So people
Perfect.
can go right there and see all of the ways to connect with you there as well. And we'll make sure that you, I want people to connect with you, honestly, Susan. I think you have
Oh,
so
thank
much
you.
to
I'd
offer.
love them to too.
Yeah. So, folks, if you're listening, write this down, bizbookpublishinghub.com, which is where you're going to find all the show notes from all these episodes that come out every Tuesday and Thursday. You're going to learn about the next upcoming free virtual networking event for writers and authors that I host throughout the year. You're going to hear about the talks that I do. You're going to meet all these amazing hub partners like Susan. There's so much there. Go over to bizbookpublishinghub.com. Susan, thank you so much for joining us this
Thank you
conversation.
so much for having me. Thanks, Robbie.